January 5th, 1975. A bulk ore carrier is veering dangerously off course on the eastern side of the Derwent. Seconds later, disaster and a city divided. Wiping out 2 pylons and bringing down a 127-metre section of road, the MV Lake Illawarra is sinking fast. Above, the unthinkable is happening as cars go over and down with the ship.
And as we're driving, we just went over the apex, and then all of a sudden, darkness, but headlights coming straight towards us and then disappearing, just plunging down.
It was 1943, and the city of Hobart, capital of Tasmania, was finally getting a much-needed connection, linking its downtown and eastern suburbs, the Hobart Floating Bridge. Separated by the River Derwent, the port city already had crossings much further north. But with travel by automobile becoming prevalent, the commute between each side of the city via these crossings far upriver was a 1 to 2 hour long journey. Hobart would also need the bridge to accommodate large vessels supplying crucial portside industry. The Hobart Floating Bridge was a monumental undertaking. Its unique concept intended to be an ingenious, cost-effective solution to what was, in the time period, a complex problem. After all, it was even insured as a ship by Lloyd's of London, the floating bridge worthy of a video on its own. However, this unique design ultimately led to its multitude of issues. Instability plagued the structure in rough weather and tidal flows, even after adding additional moorings, and frequent raising of the channel span led to constant congestion. The Hobart Floating Bridge, as impressive as it was, from an engineering standpoint, would be deemed obsolete relatively quickly, the greater Hobart area developing just too rapidly for it to accommodate, and by 1956, design of a new, more permanent solution would be commissioned. Tasmania's Department of Public Works would bring on Monsell & Partners Limited to research and design the most suitable replacement. Monsell & Partners concluded that an elevated stationary bridge, high enough to allow unimpeded ship traffic, would be the best option. With construction beginning in May of 1960, the Tasman Bridge would be comprised of mostly pre-stressed concrete atop 10-foot wide dual columns. These columns and their piers atop some 216 steel tube piles, 54 inches in diameter. The piles driven to depths of 265 feet below the waterline, into layers of stiff clay, dolerite, and basalt. At 1.42 kilometers in length, or 0.88 miles, the original 4-lane design would bridge the A3 highway near the Royal Tasmanian Botanical Gardens on the west side and suburb of Montague Bay on the east. The Tasman would open initially to 2 lanes in August of 1964. Once construction was finalized, all 4 lanes opening 4 months later, on December 23rd. The Hobart Floating Bridge, then taken out of service, disassembled, with the segments floated south and scuttled in Storm Bay. Of the Tasman's 22 spans total, most of which, approximately 140 feet long, span 14-15 over the ship channel, would be 150 feet high, 350 feet long, with the channel an approximate 100 to 115 feet deep. The piers and columns on the side of the channel itself designed to, quote, withstand the frontal impact of large ships. This main span and channel offset slightly to the east, necessitated by the flow of the river. The Tasman Bridge proved crucial from day one. A lifeline relied upon heavily, making Hobart feel more unified than ever, the suburban developments on the east side of the Derwent rising in popularity from that point forward. Laid down and launched in 1958 by BHP out of Whyalla in South Australia, the SS Lake Illawarra, under Australian flag, was a handy-size bulk ore carrier. Owned and operated by the Australian National Line, and with a crew of 42, the vessel would be roughly 140 meters in length, 18 meters in width or beam, a draft of 9.57 meters, a gross weight of 7,274 tons, a dead weight of 10,380 tons, and a top speed of roughly 13 knots. Some keen-eyed viewers may have noticed the similarities between the Lake Illawarra and the Summit Venture, the slightly larger bulk cargo ship that struck Tampa's Sunshine Skyway Bridge in 1980. I'll have a link to that video in description if you're interested. These bulk ore carriers often haul dry powder or grain-light cargoes for many different industries. In summer of 1975, the Lake Illawarra was underway, with a load of zinc ore concentrate totaling around 10,000 tons and a crew of 42. en route from Port Pirie, South Australia, bound for the Electrolytic Zinc Company in the Hobart port. The vessel was due to arrive in Hobart on the evening of January 5th. Ship pilot Digby Longhurst would have been the local guide to come aboard and man the con as the Lake Illawarra transited the channel that night. Captain B.J. Pelc, though, the vessel's longtime master, had an exemption that allowed him to navigate these waters under his own command. It was an era in Australia when these exemptions were easily attainable. The practice also saved owners and operators a bit of time and money. The seas were relatively calm on that Sunday evening. Slight fog and a rainy mist blanketed the River Derwent, the Derwent's well-known strong currents posing a further challenge that night as well. As the 140-meter-long cargo ship approached the Tasman Bridge Channel, all seemed normal, the vessel traveling at a confident 8 knots, or full-ahead shipping speed. Reports conflict, but due to either inattention or otherwise lack of situational awareness, Captain Pelc had unknowingly ordered this speed while on a course leading them west of the main navigation channel. The vessel now roughly 1.3 kilometers or 0.8 miles from the bridge. He quickly ordered the helmsman bring the vessel to starboard, or simply put, turn right and point the bow more toward the east in an effort to line back up with the channel. At this point, not yet ordering evasive maneuvers though, Pelc then ordered more steering inputs to starboard. With only 700 meters, or less than half a mile between them and the bridge, the captain finally ordered the engines to full stop, as he now had sight of the bridge's channel markers, and could see they were clearly off course. Full stop, though, is not an order that brings a vessel to a stop. This only stops the propulsion, the vessel still moving forward under its momentum, like when you take your foot off the gas in your car but don't apply the brakes. Pelc then quickly barked hard a port to the helmsman, ordering the ship to now turn hard in the other direction. At the mercy of the river's current, only 300 meters from the bridge now, and careening out of control, with the bow pointed east, the size and mass of the vessel meant these efforts to change course into the ship channel would be in vain. Captain Pelc, desperate, yelled full astern, double full astern, drop both anchors, triple full astern. These orders to reverse the engines and essentially put the brakes on were far too late. At 9:27 p.m., the bulk carrier slammed into Pier 19 bow first, then Pier 18 roughly amidships. The bow pointing east, it had drifted uncontrollably, pouring all its inertia in a near broadside orientation into both pylons. These relatively fragile columns and their piers destroyed instantly. The over 120-meter or 400 foot of bridge spans left with no supports, now crumbling and cracking under their own weight. On board the now motionless Lake Illawarra, Captain Pelc and helmsman Banks stared at one another blankly, unaware at first to the extent of the damage, the entire scene frozen in an eerie, calm-before-the-storm type moment. "Thank God it didn't hit hard," helmsman Banks said, finally breaking the silence. Crew members had gathered on the bridge. Some continued fussing with the anchors at the forecastle on the bow, others off duty, startled from their bunks by the impact. Those on the ship's bridge watched the sagging, unsupported spans almost directly above now, sparks flying from electrical wires pulling apart, cracks spidering and decks groaning as their segments buckled. Before anyone could react, more than 7,000 tons of concrete roadway fell 100 feet onto the ship, the massive debris crashing directly onto the bow and forecastle, crushing those still working in the area. The Lake Illawarra was now sinking rapidly. Being well into a Sunday evening, there was so little traffic at the time of impact, no vehicles were occupying the spans as they fell. Many crewmen scrambled, the ship sinking so fast some crew members in engineering didn't even have time to run up the stairs to the upper decks. Others, more fortunate, were able to jump overboard and swim to safety, while roughly 20 others boarded a lifeboat. The lifeboat, though, wouldn't release at first as the ship went down, and at the last moment, as the ship disappeared below the waves, the lifeboat floated free and broke safely away from the doomed vessel. The Tasman, though, by this point in its life, inspired confidence in the local area and was a relatively high-speed highway bridge. Despite the light mist that night bringing both the fog and wet road surface, the minimal traffic was still moving at or near highway speeds. High above, 2 vehicles had already plummeted off the edge, 100 feet into the freezing River Derwent. Murray Ling, driving his family in their old Holden FB station wagon, noticed at the last moment the bridge was out and slammed on the brakes. the family coming to a stop mere inches from the edge. A car behind them, though, not paying attention, slammed into the rear of the family wagon, pushing its front wheels over the edge, the car's frame grinding it to a halt. The family and the motorist behind them carefully eased out of their vehicles. Mr. Ling noticed two other vehicles approaching at highway speeds and attempted to flag them down, but they instead zoomed past without slowing, one of them even swerving to avoid him, both disappearing into the chaos below. Husband and wife Frank and Sylvia Manley were approaching in their Holden Monaro GTS. As they crested the bridge's incline, fortunately, Mr. Ling's wagon and the car behind it caught Frank's eye, and he quickly decided to slow down. Then Sylvia noticed the bridge was out altogether and yelled out. Frank stomped on the brakes at the last moment, the car's momentum nearly taking it over the edge, when miraculously, the automatic transmission casing caught the edge as the front wheels went over, and this brought the vehicle to a stop, balancing precariously on the transmission. Frank and Sylvia able to carefully exit the vehicle and get to safety as well.
Then the wife said, put it in reverse, put it in reverse. I said, stop, reverse, bloody well, get out.
There were multiple small vessels and a local ferry on site immediately, pulling as many survivors out of the water as they could. Several would be pulled to safety, including the lifeboat. Captain Pelc was among those aboard and rescued. In total, 12 souls were lost, 5 amongst the 4 cars that fell, and 7 crew members of the Lake Illawarra. Dive teams would immediately get to work searching for victims in the sunken vessel and stricken vehicles now lost in the river. It was a dangerous and painstaking task. The River Derwent up to 35 meters, or 115 feet deep. All but 1 victim would eventually be recovered. The city of Hobart, in addition to being devastated, was also now divided once again. The ballooning suburbs stretched across the east side relied solely on Hobart's west portion for all industrial employment and even emergency medical services. Local passenger ferries would be reinstated in the meantime, but these were quickly overwhelmed. Queues of passengers conducting business and trying to go to work, waiting for hours. Local officials noted that the bridge was dangerously unstable. The other glaring issue that could no longer be ignored, a road system with so little redundancy and poor planning that one incident could bring an entire metropolitan area and nearly all its commerce to a complete halt. Another major concern was expectant mothers who relied completely on facilities to the west. You had to time your labor very well so that you didn't need to deliver during the changeover. The Lake Illawarra was in an upright position on the river bottom, but at depths of 100 feet plus was not obstructing the ship channel. The ship was, however, inadvertently integrated into the remaining eastern bridge's foundation now. Removing the vessel completely would risk bringing portions of the bridge down. It was decided the Lake Illawarra would remain in this state, the oil removed and 10,000 tons of zinc ore, reportedly, safely sealed in the cargo holds. Tasmania, with federal funding, would ultimately rebuild the bridge, restoring what was left still standing and adding a 5th lane in the process. After a months-long investigation of bridge debris, the stability of the sunken bulk carrier, and traffic needs in the area, construction would be completed in October of 1977. Only 1 pier of the 2 destroyed would be rebuilt. The vessel and debris below cited as preventing construction atop it. The longer span instead reinforced, and more resilient fenders would be added to the main channel piers. Sensors were installed to give real-time condition updates to all vessels nearby, such as river currents, tidal flows, wind speeds, and local ship traffic. Large vessels would now require both a local pilot and tug, the tug necessary to aid in steering through the channel. As large vessels approach, a system of traffic lights halt all vehicle movements above and keep the main span clear until ships have transited. In 1984, the Bowen Bridge was also added further north. It's just upriver of any ports that service large vessels, and thus doesn't require a large navigation channel. There were mixed feelings about Captain Pelc's competency as a mariner. Although suspicions of him being drunk would be disproven via toxicology, he would still have his license suspended for 6 months, as authorities attributed the collision ultimately to his negligence and inattention. The initial navigation errors combined with lacking or incorrect response to resolve the situation quickly. The crew was also criticized for sending no warning down to the engineers below decks. However, some investigators felt the opposite about the captain. Sir John Spicer, chairman of the Court of Marine Inquiry, said, "There was no evidence to show that Captain Pelc had been an incompetent master, other than through his actions which led to the collapse of the bridge. On the contrary, other than in this event, Captain Pelc has been a qualified and competent master," adding, "Pelc had been an honorable man and an honest witness." From everything I've gathered, it's also clear that, at the time, there was no system of buoy markers as a guide along the ship channel, only what I've seen referred to as bridge markers, likely markings or lights directly on the bridge itself.
The Clarence City Council is holding an exhibition to mark the anniversary.
Alan, tell us what we're looking at here, the off-course alarm from the Lake Illawarra.
Okay, in theory, what it should do is sound an alarm, and it's got a little light here that lights up, which tells you if you're going seriously off course from your pathway under the bridge. So the big question is, did it not sound or did it malfunction? And of course, we don't know the answer to that.
Pelc made public his intentions to return to seafaring. After his suspension, though, his employer, Australian National Line, retired him from service anyhow. Dr. Thomas Elvett Jones, a medical practitioner from the UK, had lived in Tasmania with his wife and 3 children since 1965. Dr. Jones' wife, suffering a stroke in late 1974, was a long-term patient at Royal Hobart Hospital. His commute from their family home in an east-side suburb took him across the Tasman Bridge regularly. Dr. Jones was on his way home after visiting her Sunday evening, January 5, 1975. He was among those motorists to drive off the edge that fateful night. After more than 40 years, the magistrate's court finally closing the case attributing his death officially to the collapse. Dr. Jones was the only motorist to go over the edge that night, never to be recovered. In 1999, it was proposed that a 25th anniversary memorial service be held. Since then, multiple memorials have also been unveiled, a plaque in Queen's Domain on the west side, and a very poignant sculpture near the Montague Bay Reserve on the east. Putting these videos together via in-depth, proper research can take time, thus my content isn't super frequent. But it's thanks in large part to so many great supporters that I can put these videos together with the quality and depth I feel they deserve. And a special thanks goes out to those top-tier supporters: Alex W., Andrew M., Jenny E., Jeremy H., Kenneth P., Nathan F., Paul R., and Zachary D. Thanks so much for watching, everyone, and don't forget, your safety is crucial.